Well, greetings, people of the internet. Unky Joe here, Unky Joe's Playhouse. Today, we're going to play with Proxmox. But where? Today, though, specifically, we're focusing on Proxmox. I have been tasked with a project at work that requires me to rebuild my lab. I kind of let my lab go by the wayside once I got this new this new employment opportunity and didn't really feel the need to keep up with it. Well, things have a funny way of coming around and, knocking you upside the head out of the blue. And that's what happened in this case. And now I'm to the point where I've got to get a lab back up and running. So what better server to put this lab on than the Lenovo SR650 V2 that Lenovo so graciously has loaned me these many years. And Lenovo, if you want it back, it's here. I've got the box. But anyway, I digress. Today, we're going to put it to work. We're going to install Proxmox on it. And I'm going to show you soup to nuts how I set up Proxmox on all of my servers. Now, a shout out to Sakura. Sakura has been my mentor, my muse, if you will, the person who's helped me, guided me through Proxmox, the good and the bad. And he's gotten me to the point where I'm now pretty darn confident I know how to run it pretty well. There's still things I have to learn, like all of us. But today I want to show you how I set up my Proxmox servers, and maybe it'll help you. Maybe it won't. I don't know. But let's get the video started right now. All right, so it's been a while since we've played around with the this Lenovo server, but today what I'm going to do is install Proxmox on it, and I'm going to show you one of the reasons why you might want to have an enterprise level server, because for all intents and purposes, I could be 1,000 miles away from this server, or it could be right behind me on a roll around cart. And that is actually the case in this video. This machine is behind me on a roll around cart, but it could very well be 1,000 miles across the United States or anywhere, as long as I have internet connectivity. And basically, this is the landing page for that xClarity controller, which is basically a mini computer inside the larger computer that controls, gives you the ability to remote access it, gives you the ability to remotely install software, to run diagnostics, to do BIOS upgrades, to do firmware upgrades, etc., etc., etc. It's one of the many benefits of having an enterprise level server. But today what we're going to do is we're going to install Proxmox 8.1. I think it's up to 10 now. We're going to actually install 8.1.4, and then we'll do an update. So I'm going to take you through it soup to nuts. So the first thing we're going to do is come down here on our console preview, and we're going to launch the remote console. And so basically that gives us a keyboard, video, and mouse like we're sitting in front of the computer. The other thing I want to do is I need to mount the ISO file that this server is going to boot off of. And I've got that on my local hard drive here. So I'm going to go here to Media. I'm going to activate it. Then I'm going to browse to my local C drive, and you'll see I've got Proxmox 8.1-2. And I'm going to go ahead and open that. And I'm going to mount all local media. So now this media this image is available to this virtual or remote console. So now I'm going to go ahead and power on this server, and I have noise reduction on, so you probably won't hear it spin up in the back. You might. We're going to go ahead and power it on. All right, so it'll bring us up to the UEFI initialization screen. It's going to check its RAM, and this server is a big boy. It's got lots of RAM, and I think it's a dual processor Xeon Silver processor. So we're going to hit F10 or F12, I'm sorry, for a one-time boot device. And then we're going to be patient because this will take some time. That's one of the drawbacks of an enterprise level server. They're not fast rebooting machines. They're typically kind of slow to boot, because they have to go through a lot of processes. So it's we have 256 gig of RAM, and we have two Xeon Silver 4314 CPUs running at 2.4 gigahertz. All right, so it's significantly quieter now behind me. You probably don't notice because I have noise reduction on the microphone, but I'm up to the boot devices manager, and this screen can be a little intimidating. It's not real clear on what you should do here, but basically we're going to select the virtual CD-ROM drive. So I'm going to come all the way down here, and you'll see it here. UEFI XCC Virtual Media 039901, yada yada. Suffice it to say that is the remote media that's mounted on here. So if I hit enter on that screen, it should then boot off of the Proxmox install DVD, and it does. And if you get errors like this, don't worry. You may think it's locked up, but just be patient. All right, now we're to the install screen, and I'm going to basically install Proxmox VE graphical. It'll load the installer and then start prompting us on some of the install options. Now this unit has four 320 gig SSD drives in here, NVMe SSD drives. So I'll install the OS to the first SSD or NVMe. And then the other three drives I'll just set up as shared directories, I guess. I'm going to go ahead and agree to it. And then we'll choose the first NVMe. So that'll be NVMe 0 and 1. And I'm going to choose next, United States. I'm going to choose Chicago. And that way it gets the right time zone. Click on next. And the name I'm going to call this is SR650v2.ujp.local because it is part of the Uncle Joe's Playhouse domain. So we're going to give this an IP address of 5.26 because that is one I have reserved for it. And we need to very carefully make sure that we're choosing an actual Ethernet adapter and not the USB Ethernet adapter. I know it's strange. This is one of the 10 gig fiber connections on that unit. I think they're 10 gig. They might be 25. But anyway, in any event, we're going to give it our IP address, and our subnet is /24. And then we're going to go ahead and install it and automatically reboot after a successful installation. And then you can see it's going to go through and it's going to do its thing. So we'll let this run and we'll come right back. All right, so the install has completed and we're going through our first reboot now. And so hopefully if all has gone well, we will see a login screen. What we need to do now is go to that IP address at port 8006 in order to log in and continue on. Oh, look, a pretty kitty cat. So we'll do that. We'll go to 5.26, port 8006. We'll click through the warning, log in as root, and whatever password you have created. Now, I have not put any of my servers together, and I have a bunch of Proxmox servers, but I haven't put them all together in one cluster yet. That's coming. We'll do a separate video on that. Right now, what I want to do is show you something under the summary. So as I did that install, you notice my PVE manager here is 8.1.4. I believe they're up to 8.1.10. So the first thing I would recommend you do, and the first thing that I do, is go out here to repositories, and I add the no subscription repository. And then what I do is on these enterprise repositories, I disable them. Okay. Now it's not going to keep you from getting the nag, but you know, it'll at least, well, it might, it'll at least keep you from trying to go out and get downloads from that repository. So now if I come up here to updates and do a refresh and give it a minute, it's going to go out and it's going to find any updates that there are out there for the version of Proxmox that we're running. So this should be step one. Before you create any virtual machines or do anything else, before you do PCI pass-through or IMMU remapping or any of that, do this first. So it's completed. So you see there's a bunch of upgrades out here. So I'm just going to go ahead and trigger the update, tell it yes, and then I'm going to let the updates run. Now this is going to take a little bit of time, and then I'm going to reboot the machine. So I'll finish the updates, I'll reboot, and then we'll come back and we'll talk some more. All right, so we've had sorry about that noise. We've had a successful upgrade and reboot, and you can see now we're running on the PVE manager at 8.1.10 slash blah, 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 blah at the end of it. So we are up to date as far as the updates go for Proxmox. So the next thing I want to do is show you by this is not a tutorial. I will put links to the article that I used down in the comments section, and then you can go look them up for your own benefit. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to modify the grub file. And so, if I could spell correctly, there we go. So a couple of things I need to put in here. This is an Intel system, so I need to put Intel equal Intel underscore IOMMU equals on. And then I think we're going to do Intel equal PT as well. Let's go look that up. And again, I'll share with you the same article that I used to get through this. There we go. Need to move some stuff around. Imported. Bookmarks. Okay, so Proxmox. I use it's an older article. It's on Reddit. And of course the article's not, there we go. It's available. And I just find it very simple to use, and it works, and quiet AMD. And if it were AMD, you'd do AMD. You know that. The other thing I want to put on here is IOMMU equal PT on. Boom. And then a space, and then everything should be within the quotation marks. No spaces. Control X. Yes, we're going to save it. Give it the same file name. And then we'll do update grub. And that'll update a new grub configuration file. Now, the other thing we need to do, let's see, is we're going to add modules. So we're going to nano etc modules. And these are the modules we want to load with Proxmox. So these are the ones that are needed for PCI pass-through, IOMMU groups, and that kind of thing. Control X to save, yes. Give it the same name. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do two more commands to enable unsaved interrupts, and what is the other one? Ignore MSRS. I don't know that these are needed. Like I said, this is an older article, but I put them in there anyway. I don't think it does any harm. The other thing I want to do is blacklist my drivers so that Proxmox won't try to use any of these drivers for its use. So we'll enter that command. And again, just follow the, pretty much follow what I've done. So the other thing I'm going to do then is I'm going to update the init RAM file system, and then I'm going to reboot. So I've made those commands. So now we need to do update dash init ram fs dash u, and that'll update it'll create a new image, boot image, etc. with all these new settings in it, and the new modules will load. It'll tell it to load what modules to load, etc. So as soon as this is done, then we can reboot. And once we come back from a reboot, I'll show you how to go out and look at to see if you've got your IOMMU groups where they need to be, etc. All right, so it's done. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it to reboot. And we will come back once it's rebooted. All right, so it took about 3 minutes. You know, servers take a while to boot. And we are back up and running. So let's go out to the shell. And I'm going to do lspci. And, you know, I know the text is a little small, but bear with me. Basically, what I've done is I've dumped all of the PCI devices out so it can show me what address they're located at and or what IOMMU group. And so as you can see here, I have an NVIDIA, looks like I have a 3D controller. It says it's an NVIDIA Tesla P4. What this does is it's supposed to break out all these items into their own individual IOMMU groups, so that in the event you want to pass through one of these devices to a virtual machine, you can do that. So the whole thing leading up to this command is to show you that the operating system, Proxmox Linux kernel, has organized all these devices into their own IOMMU groups. And that'll come into play later, because if you want to be able to pass through a device, you have to be able to isolate it in its own group, separate away from other devices. In other words, you don't want, say, our video controller here, our NVIDIA Tesla P4, attached to the NVMe controller, in other words, and sharing those IOMMU groups. It's like the old days when we all had interrupts, and we had a limited number of interrupts, ways to interrupt the processor. So this is kind of an expanded version of that, to put it in simple terms. So as you can see, we now have the Tesla P4 available to pass through. We can, in theory, pass through any of these devices now that we wanted to into a virtual machine. But that's how you make that happen. The commands aren't difficult. I don't know why they don't do that by default now with Proxmox. Maybe they do, and I haven't read the changelog file. But that's how you do it manually. That's how I do it. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to go down here to disks, and you're going to see that I have those other NVMe drives in here. And right now, the one, you got to be careful, because the one that's being used is this drive right here, I believe. I believe this is our boot drive. So it's got BIOS boot, EFI, and LVM. So yeah, there's my LVM partition there. So the drives the reason I'm saying this, you got to be careful, is because I'm gonna wipe these drives, these other ones, so that I can set them up to be used in Proxmox. So I don't want to wipe the disk where my operating system is located, and I don't believe that Proxmox would allow me to do that. But let's take the time and be careful, right? So now I have 3 drives. They're available for use. Now, I've done a lot of research on this. I'm not a big fan of using ZFS. You know, I don't understand it well enough. I don't understand lots of things well enough to use ZFS. So what I've done is, little research I've done has told me just set these drives up as a directory. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to use the extended for file system. I'll call this SSD1. I tell you what, we'll call it NVMe1. And then I'm going to do that with all the other drives as well, the other 2. So what that'll do is give me 3 NVMe directories, or drives. Let's see, NVMe2, right? Is that what I called it? NVMe1, NVMe2, and NVMe3. I'll name the third one. All right, so here we go. Now we have 3 possible different storage locations, and they can contain all bunch of stuff on them. But we can change that too. We can change what we're allowed to put into those shared directories. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to add my ISO share. So I'm going to go up here to the root, and I'm going to go up to data center and go up here to storage, and I'm going to add an NFS store, and we'll call this ISO, and the server it's on is 5.3, or my DS1621, and the share name should come up now as ISO, and that's going to contain ISO images. I don't want it to contain disk images, and I'm going to enable it. I'm going to click on add. And I'm going to add one more, and that is the backup storage, and that is on NFS as well, and we'll call that backups. So that's on 5.3, and that one is called backup images or backups. And this one will contain VZ dump backup files only. Okay, and I'm going to enable it. So now I have access to, if I let Proxmox update here, I have access to my ISOs, and there are all the ISO images. And then I have the backups, and there's all my backup images and, some notes on what they are. So now, with just a few simple steps and a little bit of patience, I have managed to get Proxmox set up. And this is the baseline setup that I do for Proxmox. To be up and running. And now I can add any number of virtual machines I want to. I can also pass through devices from this SRV 650 server. I could, in theory, fill this thing with Tesla P4 cards and share them out to multiple virtual machines if I wanted to. I don't have a need for that, but I could do it if I wanted to. All right, so this is weeks later, I'm catching up, and I wanted everybody to see. Right now I'm on 8.1.10 of the Proxmox PVE manager, and there has been a big update out. So this is my lab unit, so I'm going to go ahead and try to include this update in this video, so you can see me doing it in real time. So there you go. There's the components that are going to be upgraded. It's going to upgrade them from let's see if we can find the Proxmox. Yeah. Newest Proxmox kernel is going to be 6.8. We're going from 8.1 to 8.2. Yeah. Okay. Don't do this on your production machine. Okay, just don't. But doing it on a lab machine, that's why we create these lab units. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it upgrade. I'm going to click on yes, and we'll let the upgrade run, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. All right, so the update is complete, and they're recommending we reboot to activate the new kernel. So I'm going to go ahead and close this window, and then I'm going to come back here to my summary, and I'm going to choose reboot. So that should initiate a reboot on the server. We'll come over here and monitor the Lenovo Xclarity interface screen to see if it is indeed rebooting. And once we verified that, I'll pause the video and we'll come back once it's rebooted. There we go. So we'll let that reboot, and I'll come back when the screen changes. So we've now gone through post on the Lenovo, and it appears that it has come back up. And let's go see if I can actually log in. There we go. You'll see we're now on 8.2.2, and I don't see any errors. Looks like it's seeing all my virtual machines, and we'll spin some up here in a minute. Let's see. Okay, so I've got 3 VMs on here. The rest are all sysprep images. They're all templates that I've created. So let's see if we can't, let's see, server trial updated. Let's see if we can't boot this up and get it to run. Just want to make sure everything's working okay. Looks like it appears to be. And then this will, there we go. All right. Let's make sure I can log in. I'm pretty certain I will be able to, but you never know. There we go. So Windows Server standard evaluation up and running. Server 2019, I should add. There you go. It's up and running. Cool. So it looks like that worked. We'll come back one more time to updates, and we'll just refresh and make sure we don't have any more updates after this one. If there have been any bug fixes or anything since then, and no, it looks clear. So I would say that was successful. Don't try this on your production unit. This is my, this is a lab environment. This is a lab server. So I felt, pretty safe doing it on here. If I screwed something up, no big deal. So there you go, soup to nuts. In fact, I waited long enough to put the video together and assemble it that you even got to see me upgrade it to the current version of Proxmox. Now, that being said, I don't recommend you do that on a production environment. And speaking of production environments, I've just gotten to the point where I trust Proxmox enough to run it on a client system. And the client made the decision to run it on their system, and it's been pretty darn rock solid. When I first got started with Proxmox, I had some issues. I had some little rocky bumps in the road, but we're talking 5-6 years ago when I first started this channel. I played around in Proxmox. I wasn't real impressed by it at the time. I was still a big fan of XCPNG. And, nothing against XCPNG. It works really well. But now that VMware pulled the stunt it pulled, the company that owns VMware, people are left kind of hanging. And so if you have any doubts about Proxmox, I just don't take my word for it. Get your feet, spin up a Proxmox lab. Hell, I'm sure all of us have some equipment lying around we could run Proxmox on, right? It doesn't take a real powerful unit. You can even run it on mini PCs. Just get your feet wet, get into the lab environment and figure out some of the cool things you can do with Proxmox. I learn every day new things to do under Proxmox. So anyway, we hope you found the video entertaining and informative. As always, please smash the like button. Let the YouTube algorithm know if you liked this. Leave your comments down in the comments section. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and hit that notification bell to be notified of new videos when they come out. Come back and see us again, and please don't forget, we'll see all of you on the other side.